Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to the 2024 World Rapid Chess Championship. This is the third and final day. Today we crown champions. And one thing we can safely say is that last year's defending champion will not be world champion again. There will be no 18th world title for Magnus Carlsen after the debacle yesterday. I will not elaborate too much. Today during the live broadcast, there were interviews by many people. Everybody from Hikaru Nakamura to Hans Niemann. By the way, if you missed my 11-minute segment with Hans Niemann, it was a very different Hans Niemann than the explosive Hans Niemann interview. He made some quite good points, and I do urge you to go watch it. Arkady Dvorkovich, the president of the international governing body of the game, spoke. Danny Wrench spoke. A lot of people spoke. And it's unfortunate, and we might be headed toward the very first year in about 15 years that Magnus Carlsen doesn't have a single world championship title, but we have 2 more days to decide that because the Blitz starts on December the 30th. Now, epic stuff here. And your first game of the day is an appetizer game, not a game for the podium, not a game for the medal finish, but I will serve you Hikaru Nakamura versus Hans Niemann to kick things off. Then I will show you the medal race. I will show you the winner of the women's section, and that is what we will do. By the way, for those of you that are that never had a Chess League course before, there are 3 days left to lock in the launch price. So at the very minimum, you should go make an account, try it for free for 7 days, but you've got 3 days to lock that in, and it is $7 a month to for access to everything. Here we go. All right. Hikaru Nakamura versus Hans Niemann is the appetizer game. Then we will look at games by Volodar Murzian. We will look at games by Jan-Krzysztof Duda, Alexander Grishuk, and Arjun Erigaisi, Javahir Sandarov, Yan Nepomniachtchi, and more. I mean, we've got an amazing array of games. So, the very first game is Hikaru versus Hans. Now, what's funny is earlier in the day, actually, Hikaru was playing with the black pieces, and Brandon Jacobson played a4 against him, and won the game. And you may remember Brandon Jacobson from the previous recap. I want to give everybody airtime. He's the one that played a4, rook a3. Hikaru in that game went e5, and well, rook a3 obviously was not possible, but Brandon won a very nice game. This was an epic one because this is, you know, well, what can you say? This is a very, very tense rivalry. I'm sure these guys really want to play well against each other. Hikaru goes for a major sideline of the Italian. He plays knight c3, knight d5, which is a super rare line, and then he trades the bishops like this and dips the knight out of the middle. I mean, if I look at the database, I can imagine this has basically never been played. The idea by white is to set up like this, all right? Control the pawn, the square on d4, control the g4 square, maybe have an advance ready here, control b5, and be ready to open up the position like this. Hans himself has been playing a bunch of Italians with white and with black. So he's got a lot of experience, but so does Hikaru. And Hans in this game goes for b5, creates counterplay on the queen side. The second that Hikaru's rook sidesteps, we have takes, takes. And now we realize here that after takes and takes, bishop takes b5 is possible. And that is a dynamite strike in the center of the board. Hikaru's spending 4 minutes calculating this because now d4 is a problem and the rook is hanging. Obviously, Hans miscalculated something here because after the rook hangs, there is a double attack on the queen and the queen can't save the knight. So after something like this, takes, maybe queen e4, even something like rook e1, white is just very, very comfortable and has an extra pawn. d4 is a problematic move, and here Hans burns, and this is crazy, 8 minutes and 46 seconds. And he goes here. He straight up gives away the rook, right? Why? Well, he got a bishop, and he gives away the rook completely. He can't take here because he would lose his queen. He goes for rook takes e4. Hikaru has Hans completely on the ropes. 10 minutes to 3, and an absolutely crushing position. Hikaru plays knight c4, pawn takes d4, he trades the pieces, and in this position, I have no idea why the move rook to e1 was not played. It was played on the next move, ultimately, but, you know. I kind of like rook e1 here. Make the trade. Try to get down there. But knight Knight d2 is perfectly reasonable. I guess Hikaru wanted to play rook c1 as well. So, you know, I'll forgive it. So, d3. Takes. Rook c1. This is targeted. That's targeted. Right? We have knight d4 ideas. We have knight b3, knight d4. I mean, Hikaru's just got an extra rook. Like, ultimately, he just has a rook. But slowly, Hans keeps playing. And somehow, this pawn is just, like, not capturable. The king can't get closer. I think the mistake from Hikaru was maybe playing passively. Like, maybe he played knight d2 and that was passive. Knight e1 was a bit passive. And what's kind of crazy is this sort of easy move f3 to bring the king is apparently just incorrect, which is sort of insane. Maybe he had to do it slightly differently. Hans just plants the knight on the center, and Hans is now playing for advantage out of nowhere. Total turnaround. I don't know how that happened. Knight e3, rook c1, and this game gets totally insane. Hans, look at this position as the king runs all the way down to the other side of the board. You talk about a king that's putting in the work. You talk about a king that has marched the entire way from the corner. This king is just sitting here, and it's a very complicated endgame. Hans trying to promote his c-pawn. Ultimately, he will promote his c-pawn because Hikaru here blundered. Apparently, should have brought his knight back first. The boys race the pawns down. Hikaru has to give up his knight. They both queen, but Hans is just up a bishop. Now, queen and bishop versus queen is a draw. You actually can't beat a queen with a queen and a bishop. You need more, which is why Hans is very important that he preserves his final pawn. This game is now deep into the 60th move. Hans bringing the king all the way back to help. Look, I mean, yo, how many king moves did Hans make? We gotta count this, because the king runs all the way back to g7 and then goes to the corner to h8. I mean, this is just a meme at this point. Hans picks up the pawn, and like I said, he wins the game if he keeps that final pawn, and he's gonna keep it. He's going to keep it, and another bonus here is that this is the right promotion square. The bishop and the pawn, you have to have the right color. Hikaru plays queen b6 and just resigns because after king h5 and queen f3, the game is lost. I think that's the most king moves I've straight up ever seen. The king castled, then it went to f8, e7, d6, c6, it's 5 moves, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, oops, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20, 21, 22, and then there were more because it came out to... What? And Hans wins. Insane. Absolutely wild. Absolutely wild game. Then he tweeted, of course, said the student has become the teacher, or the student has become the master. You know, typical good stuff. Hikaru wins in the Speed Chess Championship for the bronze medal match. And in the World Rapid Championship, Hans gets the better of Hikaru. Now, let us check in with everybody competing for the podium spot. 2 guys are in the first place of the tournament. It is Volodar Murzian, young man from Russia. And young Krzysztof Duda is up there. Yani Pomnishi is up there. Alexander Grishuk is up there. Linier Dominguez, Arjun Erigaisi. Let's see what happens. So, this one was a sideline, if you will, but it quickly became a London. It was a London system. Knight e5 is one of these modern lines. Bishop d3, and now knight f3. All of this has been played before, and, you know, bishop g3 is just kind of a waiting move. We have a trade, and here Volodar is like, I'm not gonna castle, I'm gonna go g4. Murzian is very solid, but he also does strike. He's a very calculated and skilled attacking player. He just likes to play the best move. Kind of crazy. Duda here opens up the center of the board, trying to bring his light-scored bishop to the party, but the problem with the approach of e5 is you lose your big advantage. Here, f5 might have been a little bit better. He goes for e5, and principal decision here from Murzian, who's like, well, I'm just going to get the bishop pair off the board and long castle. And there is not going to be any peace in a position like this. Rook d4, bishop f5, complete madness. But now we have an endgame. Now we could have a little bit of peace. We have rooks. It's 7 pawns each. Rook f5, rook f4, very solid, no problem. Okay. But Murzian is causing some issues. Like, the pawn structure is a little bit bad, and also, you know, Duda's got only 20 seconds, so maybe at some point, oh, maybe some point, as in right now, he's gonna find himself in a difficult rook endgame. He's gonna find himself potentially down a pawn, which he is. Murzian is not going to give this pawn back. He's got total stability. Now, the insane thing about this position is that after f5, black is actually completely fine and almost even better. Pawn takes g4, king d3. This is madness. Murzian just went from a pawn up to a pawn down. Both guys are running pawns up the board. Rook e2, king d5, c5, but it's just a draw. I mean, both guys have passed pawns. You can't promote, but neither side can promote a pawn here. Rook g5, b3. Duda is all in. Murzian is all in. Whose pawns are going to promote? But king f6 is a fatal mistake because of pawn to e7. You can actually just give this away. And there must have been some sort of oversight here. He had to go to literally any of the back rank squares here, Duda. He goes forward, and now suddenly you're not going to be able to stop the pawns because after this, I have rook g3. You have to go back and take my pawn, or, you know, you don't have to, but now you get to this position, and this is losing because it's a rook and pawn endgame, and the black king needs to be in this area. You have to be defending on the short side, not on the opposite side, and the reason is the king makes it to the outside of the board. Rook d2, c7, Murzian winning a nail-biter endgame. So clutch. And he does this by building the bridge. He builds the bridge. Rook e5, rook c5 is going to shield. The king is too far, and he wins a very stressful and very, very tense endgame. Grishuk versus Araghi. All right, this one a Sicilian defense. Grishuk playing some knight c3 Grand Prix attack. He ultimately plays a close Sicilian, but it turns into a Grand Prix attack. And Araghi is no stranger to a complicated fight. He creates opposite side attacks with b4. You know, Grishuk's like, well, now I've got the c4 square, so I'm going to play knight d2 and put my knight over here, and then put my knight over here, and we will attack you. You know, but after a4, this is a very sophisticated decision here from Grishuk. He could just go f5, g4, g5, king h2, knight g3, like typical stuff. But he actually goes here, and the reason is he wants to completely lock the center of the board. And he doesn't want Araghi to have any play. And Araghi is dangerously close to getting him trouble, so he does this because that tries to keep the position open. Grishuk relocks the center and then puts the knight on c3 and is like, I have no idea what black is going to do here because I have takes, and I'm going to put a knight on d5. And I sort of threaten the attack on the black position, but instead of attacking, I'm just sort of chilling. I'm just improving my position, and I'm building up the attack slowly. But now it's go time. Now Grishuk is winning because he simply grabs a pawn, and the attack is very powerful, but it's a very complicated position. Grishuk trying to go to an endgame. Araghi grabs a pawn. The b file has been taken over. f5 is a counterattack from Araghi. The bishop goes to the corner of the board. The rooks are trying to play defense. Infiltration and rook g6 on the board. But now Araghi is going to get e4. This guy's a madman. He's excellent at creating counter chances. Pawn takes, pawn takes. He's still down a pawn. 2 pawns. But rook e1, knight c2. The pieces are just sniping. Is it going to be repetition? No, a check. And now the knight is going to be able to be defended by the rook from the edge of the board. Here comes a3. Because maybe Araghi is going to get this pawn. And actually here, Grishuk is completely winning. But somewhere around in the next few moves, he panics. And all of a sudden, Araghi is simply fine. Not only is he fine, this pawn is 2 squares away from promotion. This is nuts. Bishop e6 check, king g6, rook g8. And Araghi here had to play knight c2. Because knight c2 creates a threat on the bishop. And if knight c2 d6, knight a1 d7, black can sacrifice the rook, get the knight out, and constantly threaten a promotion. But because instead of knight c2, Araghi goes here, after d6, it looks like the exact same position, but it's not because you never grab my bishop. So after d7, rook d7, bishop d7, and this, I'm fast enough, and I simply win the pawn. And that is the problem. He needed to preserve the situation with the pawn on a3. Grishuk defends himself. There's still some chaos in this game, but Grishuk absolutely never in doubt. Multiple pawn advantage, and later he's going to win a 3rd pawn, and that's it. And Arjun Araghi, his gold medal chances are gone after losing to Alexander Grishuk. It is Murzian, it is Grishuk, and it is the winner of the game, Yan Nepomniachtchi versus Javahir Sindarov. This one was a Najdorf Sicilian. This is something that Nepo has played a bunch of. It's a sideline chosen from Javahir. He uses the f-pawn to make a trade. According to the computer, he actually had a pretty pleasant position, but I think he actually chose the wrong plan here. Instead of b3, he needed to put the bishop here, and try to bring his rook to the center. This plan, unfortunately, is not the right one, and Nepo immediately has a nice position and provokes queen, he's got queen h4 here on the way. So what are you going to do about this? How are you going to get rid of this knight? Well, obviously going to get rid of it with the pawn, except that doesn't get rid of anything. And suddenly, there are some really, really nasty intentions. Knight d3, bishop e5, you've got all sorts of attacks brewing. And, I mean, obviously, black can't go queen g3 just yet because you're going to take the knight. But in the next couple of moves, that's what... Nope. And my man Yan Nepomniachtchi showed up to play today because after pawn takes, knight takes, my man is just delivering a checkmate. There's only so many moves you can do. You have to sacrifice your knight and get in your queen. But king h8 and Sindarov is just losing. He has to go here. But after knight to e3, it's mate, it's hanging. And Nepo has to be accurate here. This is the best move of the game because it stops mate in one. But it's also a very classy move. Queen G, he didn't have to play it. He could have played f5. But queen g7 is a very classy move, leaving the position, defending mate, hitting the pawn, hitting this. And you've also, you know, the queen is not here. It's never going to be available for counterplay, as far-fetched as it is. And yeah, just a very nice win from Nepo, who cleans things up. Rook g5. And black's knight is... Look at this. Look at this disconnection. The knight stuck in the black position, can't escape at all. Just a monstrous win from Yan Nepomniachtchi. Now, before I show you the gold medal matches in the Open, there was a gold medal match in this game. This was the women's section, and the women play 11 games instead of 13. I don't really know why that is, and I'm not going to open two Pandora's boxes. Yesterday we had a Pandora's box about dress code, how rules apply, whether it's ridiculous or not to enforce such a rule against, first of all players, and second of all, the greatest in the world, who brings the most eyeballs. Why the women play less chess than the men, plus on top of that, the women's only tournaments, and the question of is it just to make everybody feel more inclusive and welcoming and etc. and titles. We're not getting into all that right now. I'm simply providing you the facts that they play less games. So this is round 11, and there was the threat of an 8-person tie for first place, which the regulations say would have led to a knockout tournament. Or the winner of this game wins the gold medal. Let's get into it. E4, E5. And by the way, if anybody doesn't know, Irene Sukandar is one of the strongest chess players in Indonesia. And she was actually the one. Some of you might have heard about this. Some of you might have not heard about this. And some of you watching might be from Indonesia. The Dewa Kipas, which was a crazy thing that was a part of my life in early 2021, where I played somebody who was banned for cheating on chess.com, and basically that person's son made a post and said, my fans mass reported this person. That's not really what happened. But yeah, like Irene ended up playing the person, and that was crazy. So she had a big match. She ended up winning it 3-0. And she's one of the strongest players in, and if you've never heard about this, just look up GothamChess Indonesia. So shout out to all the Indonesian chess fans out there. You're awesome. And to this day, I randomly get comments like, you lost to Dewa Kipas, because, I don't know, some people just never found out the whole story. So she's playing for the gold medal, which is pretty awesome. And Humpy Konaru, was a top 3 woman in the world for many years. She's an absolute legend. And, yeah, what more can you say? This one was pretty peaceful. It was also in Italian. It was an Italian which was peaceful right up until the moment d5 was played, I should say. After de knight e4, we have a sacrifice of a knight on the d3 square. The bishop is taken on b3, And ultimately, when the dust settles, it's actually Irene who, visually, to me, has the better position. However, as always, the computer doesn't like it. I really like how the pawns support the knights. I like the pressure that they put on the black position. You know, if I could play rook f3, rook g3, put my rook, attack, like, that's all the stuff I would do. But Humpy here goes for a queen trade, and we are quickly heading for a draw. But there is still plenty to play for in the position, all right? We have rooks and 6 pawn each. But there is enough imbalance, and the players have 90 seconds, and there might be nerves. This is ultimately the gold medal match. Humpy playing excellent chess, splitting the white pawns, creating some weaknesses. There's a weakness now on the edge of the board. And Irene here, rather than playing it passively and allowing stuff like b5 and rook a7, she goes straight down the middle, makes this pawn capture, and it's like, okay, let's make this trade, rook b7. This is a draw. Rook d4, but as you already know, and probably can allude, can Humpy create enough complications here? g4 on the board, king f4, suddenly g5. In this position, Irene could have played a move like rook d6 check. Checking was the safe bet, because after king e7, you simply put the rook on g6, and then you put the rook back on d6, and if black waits, you also can wait, king f4, king f3 back. Probably checking was the best bet, as if the king goes here, you can always trade, and you can just hang out. And the rook has to defend. If king g5, you can play king f3. If king f5, you don't go here, because then the king joins the pawn. That is the biggest problem. And Irene gets kicked back, and now suddenly, white doesn't stop the king from going to help the pawn. Once the king is ready to help the pawn, it's very instructive because the king simply darts down. And remember, we just looked at short side defending. Well, on top of that, you got more pawns in this endgame. Humpy makes it into the position, and a heartbreaking defeat for Irene, and jubilation for Humpy Hikaru, who adds to the gold medal count of India this year. I mean, it is insane. They have champions on both Olympiad teams, men and women. They have the world champion, and now they have the women's world rapid champion, and we're about to see if they can also add a rapid champion in the open. Okay, here we go. This is effectively the gold medal game. Pragnananda, Volodar, Murzian. Prague trails Volodar by half a point. He has to win. We've seen a lot of Italians in today's recap, and Prague plays one of the most aggressive, bishop b5, knight e4 takes. This has all been played before. It's theoretical. It's potentially sharp. Volodar knows his theory. Both guys are pretty confident in the opening. We have a crazy trade here. We have bishop c6, pawn takes, and here Volodar takes the knight, allows pawn takes g7, and it's a very, very sharp position where if you count the pawns, Prague is up 2. It's really only going to be 1. Now Prague has an extra pawn, and he just has to find a way to continue to add the pressure. So he starts bringing his queen over. Okay, he plays rook e1, a queen trade. And Prague here realizes he has to create problems on the other side of the board, and problems he is creating. c5, the bishop goes here, the rook goes here. Black has one idea here. One. Cause problems for white's king. That's it. That's the only idea. Maybe rook h4, but then you need the second rook, and it's simply going to take too much time. White's idea is get in and eat everybody. Eat everybody, all right? Eat everybody. That is the idea. The rook comes down to g2. Nice idea here from Prague, taking away squares. Now, as we can see, the goal is counterplay. Volodar he has one plan here. It's to bring the king in, maybe bring in the bishop, and that's the plan. Now, if white goes here, Prague probably has a draw. He can at least make a draw. The reason Prague is not grabbing this is after king f3, something like a rook b1, you can't actually take the bishop because rook g1, and then you can get sealed off. That is the only thing. That is the only plan that black has. It's putting the king on e2 and bishop to e1. Prague, very correctly, darts his pawn forward. And now this plan doesn't work. Prague is about to beat the leader of the World Rapid Championship and have a half-point lead going into the final round. The king comes into e2. The only idea is bishop e1 and rook g1. f6 on the board. Why does that work? Because now if you play bishop 2e1, check out how wicked this is. I sack my rook, and before you mate me, I play rook b1 check. Now you don't have a mate. Now f7, your rook cannot defend the queen and the rook at the same time, and Prague wins. This is a wicked idea. Prague is completely winning. The rook comes back. But now Prague repeats once. He has 24 seconds. It's plus 5.5, but it's a weird one. The winning idea here for white is not easy. If you push the pawn, it's not really clear what you do after rook f8. Well, what you do after rook f8, apparently, is give a check, allow the king in, and you can play f4. And not only do you stop mate, you threaten it yourself. f7, check, and f4. The main idea is to disconnect this, but Prague panics. He makes a move with 1 second on the clock to gain 10 more and hit 11. Prague was looking for the win. If he repeated moves one more time, he wouldn't have had it. There was a couple of ways to win, but they involved that counterplay, and suddenly panic comes in, and he is losing. And this one is not difficult to convert. Volodar Murzian winning it. The comeback kid wins against Pragnananda, and he took a half-point lead into the final round, which he converted pretty easily. Alexander Grishuk got a pretty quick draw in the final round as well. And your 2024 World Rapid Champion is Volodar Murzian, 18 years old, 2 months younger than Gukesh. About 1.5 months. Crazy. He is the second youngest winner of this title since Nodirbek Abdusatorov won it at the age of 17. We now have 2 out of 3 world champions who are 18 in the chess world. Volodar is excellent. He's an excellent Rapid and Blitz player. And last year, I think he got 5th in this tournament. So this is awesome to see. Silver was Grishuk, and bronze was Yan Nepomniachtchi. So you talk about a countryman sweep. First, second, and third. There was a big tie. I think for third, it was all tie breaks based. And Humpy Conneru is the women's champion. Tomorrow, there is a day of rest. And after that, we play the Blitz. And this year, the Blitz is different. The Blitz is a round robin to qualify for a top 8. Let me know in the comments. Do you think Magnus Carlsen will have a change of heart? Will have a conversation with FIDE? Do you think he will play the World Blitz Championship? That's all I have for you today. Make sure to check out the launch price on Chessly. It's expiring in 3 days. Get out of here.